Hello and welcome back to One Piece of Insight, where we use analysis to help you achieve your TCG collecting goals. In today's video, we're going to be looking at what I view are the top 10 best buying opportunities for this week. Now, before we jump into the actual content, we need to set some parameters here. So I wanted to create a system that would identify on a scale of 1 to 5 how good of a buy I think something actually is. This is something we're going to use for this video, but it's also a scale we're going to use moving forward. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to the content. Okay, so first up this week is actually a few different things that fall into the same bucket. There are starter decks, for those who aren't aware, that actually contain packs from specific desirable sets. So for example, this Smoker deck includes a pack of PRBO1. PRBO1 as a box right now is about $900. So if you do the math and figure out on a per pack basis, a single pack of PRBO1 is going for around $37.50. So you could buy this box for $38 as a way to either get a PRBO1 pack and then also get a starter deck that you're interested in, or as a way to invest just a tiny bit of money as a way to gain exposure to a very popular set. One of the things that I also want to say about this, for those who aren't aware, is that while there definitely should be a premium for cases, because we know the cases are going to contain certain hits, because the cases are mapped, which means that you know how many hits you're going to get in an individual case, when people open a case, if they pull those hits, they could then opt to sell the individual boxes that are a lot less likely to have hits in them or will have less desirable cards in them. This is a real challenge if you're trying to buy boxes on the secondary market. And so for that reason, although sometimes people do pay a premium for booster boxes because they're good display pieces, I would be very careful when buying individual boxes on the secondary market. I would only want to buy them from reputable dealers. This goes even more so for packs, whether they're, sort of loose packs from booster boxes that could easily be what's left over after they've pulled all their hits, or even if they're sleeved booster packs from a big box store. My understanding is that those can be weighed. So the advantage of a product like this is because it is sealed and because you can't weigh it, you are more likely to get a pack that's live and actually has potential pulls in it. So for that reason, I would actually value the packs in these sealed products a little bit more highly than I would either loose or even in a sealed booster box that you're just buying off the internet. A couple other examples here are the Starter Deck 24 Jewelry Bonnie has a pack of OP11. OP11 is currently selling for around $425 a box. So if you do the math on that, that's around $19 a pack. So again, here you can get an entire starter deck for about $1 more than just the pack price. And then the cheapest and best value of these three actually is the Starter Deck 25 Blue Buggy, where you can still get it for $15, which is actually $4 less than the pack value from the OP11 pack that is included within the set. So for that reason, if you're looking to get a little bit of exposure to either of those sets, or you're interested in the starter decks, or you like the sealed product, I think these are potentially good buys. They're not spectacular, but we're going to go ahead and give them a Boa Hancock 3 stars. So moving on to our next product is one that a lot of people may actually not be aware of. This is the 7 Warlords of the Sea binder set. It includes 12 promo cards. Most importantly, it includes these 2 Boa Hancock cards here, which individually are selling for between about $85 and $100 total, while as most of the other cards in the set are not particularly expensive, but still command between $5 and $20 each. If you just look at the 2 Boa Hancocks, that's about $175, $180 worth of value in those 2 cards. So if you are paying $176, if you can get it around this price, you're essentially getting a binder and you're getting 10 other promo cards that I think are pretty decent for the cost of just those 2 boas. So if you're a boa fan, I think this is, potentially a decent opportunity to add those cards to your collection while also picking up some other cards for essentially free. And so for that reason, I am also going to give this one 3 stars. Moving on, we have the OP1 Luffy Romance Dawn Parallel. So this card is currently selling for around $175, which I know is a lot for a normal sort of alt art card. However, I have a couple thoughts on this. The first is this is the first Luffy from the first set. I think this is going to be an iconic card. If you watched my recent, 30 most iconic cards under $1,000 video, this was one of the ones that was ranked pretty highly. I think if you compare this to other cards of similar sort of iconic stature from this set, so for example, the Nami parallel, even the post errata version is still selling for consistently over $400, and now the lowest price on TCG Player is $650. So if I'm asking the question, do I think that Nami should be between $500 and $650, and this Luffy should be $175? I certainly don't think that. So I think this is one that has potential upside, and if you like this card, if you want it in your collection, I think this is one that I would pick up before it potentially goes higher. So I'm going to go ahead and score this one a VV, 4 stars. I think this one is a decent value and has some room for improvement. Okay, next up is actually the Luffy convention promo from 2024. So someone actually mentioned this one in the comments, which I really appreciate. And when I dug into it, I figured out that I agreed with them, this actually was a pretty good value. And here's sort of the logic. So for those who don't know, there are 2 of these available. There is a foil version, which is going for around $85. And then there is a non-foil version of the same image, which is going for around $21. So, the foil version is about 4 times as much as the non-foil. Well, the reason this matters in terms of my thinking is that over the last year, there have been 12,291 of the non-foils sold, and only 806 of the foils sold. So based off of the fact that there's more than 14 times as many of the non-foil as the foil, and you're only paying a 4 times price increase for the foil, I think you're getting a significantly rarer card at not that much of a price premium. I also think this art is interesting. I mentioned it on my honorable mentions list for my most iconic cards, just because I think this has the potential to be more iconic as time goes on. So for that reason, I actually picked up one of these cards on the advice in the comments. So thanks again for that. And I'm going to share that recommendation with you as well. All right, moving on, we have the Akira Egawa Luffy alt art from Paramount War. So this card is around $67, which I think for a Luffy card, particularly an older Luffy card, is pretty reasonable already. But the reason I really want to single out this card is because, as I mentioned in the video where I looked at iconic cards, I think this card will become iconic because Akira Egawa is a very popular artist, both within the One Piece trading card game, but also in the Pokemon trading card game, where if the game continues to grow, we're going to see more of those people migrating into One Piece, and they're going to want to collect her art as well. So this is another one that I think has a good amount of upside. And so for that reason, I'm going to label it 4 stars. All right, next up, we have the Gold Dawn Gear 5 Luffy card from PRB02. So this one's currently selling for around $170, which I understand is a lot for a Dawn. But I think it's important to recognize how rare these Gold Dawn actually are. There were 30 of them. There were 2 per box, or 2 per case, rather. And so that's quite rare. And so for a card this rare that is a Gear 5 Luffy, it only being $170, I think it's providing a lot of value relative to the rarity. I would also say, too, that while there hasn't been a lot of movement in the Gold Dawn over the past 3 months, there are signs that movement is starting to happen, and we are starting to see the upside of some of those cards. So, for example, the Zoro Gold Dawn card from PRB01 is now jumped from around $250 up to over $400, and now the lowest available is $900 with a high sale price of $644. So I think that if people are willing to pay $600 for the Zoro Gold Dawn, I think getting the Gear 5 Luffy Gold Dawn for $170, if you like the card, if you want it in your collection, there is room for appreciation here. Obviously none of this is a guarantee, right? None of this is financial advice. This is just, if you're interested in having these cards in your collection, how do you spend your resources as efficiently as possible? And this is one place that I am putting resources because I do like the potential of this card, and I think it's really cool. Moving on, we have OP14 booster boxes. I actually think this is the right time to buy OP14 booster boxes They were up to around, a peak of $270 a few weeks ago, and they have subsequently come down to, around $240 shipped. I actually think this is a pretty good value for this box. If you look at what the other booster boxes are going for, you have Royal Blood, two Legends, those are selling for around $230 each, basically the same price as this. But the big difference there is that those are, the lowest quality sets ever printed in One Piece. Whereas, in my opinion, at least, this is an A minus or a B plus set. It's not an S tier set, but I do think it's one of the better sets that have been printed. I think as the Zoro card continues to rise in price, as the Boa card continues to rise in price, I think the Mihawk manga is really good. I think a lot of the SPs are really good. So for that reason, I think this box is much closer in quality to the boxes that are selling in the 350 to 450 range than it is to the boxes selling in the 220 range. So I think if you like this set, I think this is probably one of the best opportunities you'll get to buy into it at a somewhat affordable price. So for that reason, I'm also going to give it 4 stars. Next up, we have the OP9 Luffy parallel leader card. Again, calling back to the video we just did, I rated this as one of the most iconic cards, available for under $1,000, and this is way under $1,000. It's Gear 5. I think the art is fantastic. I think the perspective on his face is very different from the way all the other cards look, and so when you have all your cards on your display case or in your binder, it really, really stands out. And so for that reason, I do think that this is a card that's going to become more appreciated over time. And I think at $130 compared to, the OP1 Luffy, which now is going for over $1,000, and many of the other Luffy alts that can be had for $500, $600, $800, $900, I think $130 for this card is actually still a quite good value. I actually paid about this price when OP9 came out for this card because I liked it that much, and that was back before the game grew to the point that it's at. So I think the fact that it can still be had at that price is actually a really good opportunity. So I'm going to give that one 4 stars as well. All right, moving on to, and we're going to treat these two together. We have Illustration Box Volume 6 and also Illustration Box Volume 5. Both of these boxes can be had for around $60 to $65, which I actually think is a really good deal. And the reason is, if you look what's inside, you have 2 promo cards that are going for a cumulative total of like $10 to $15 each. You have 2 OP13 packs, which with a box price of $700 is around $29 each, right? So that's $58, $68, $73. And then you have 2 PRBO2 packs, which is a set that's going for, around $350. So again, that's, $15+ a pack. So you're looking at almost $100 of value in a box that you can get for around $60 to $65. Also, calling back to what I said earlier about the sealed product, because these are sealed packs in a sealed set that can't be weighed, like, I actually think that if you're going to rip packs, this is what you want to rip, as opposed to a booster box that you're buying online. I also think that in the future, if people want to rip, there will be some premium placed on these sealed products where they know the packs are actually live, as opposed to not knowing what they're actually getting when they buy a booster box. And so for that reason, I think that there's a lot of value right now. If you just want to buy it and rip it, I think this is the most cost-effective way to open these packs. But if you also want to save it, I think there's lots of potential for appreciation in the future. Illustration Box Volume 1 is now going for almost $200. Now, granted, the promos in that set are way, way, way better than the promos in this set, but the packs in this set are way better than the packs in that set. And so for that reason, I think both Box 6 and Box 5 are really, really good. To me, they're kind of a toss-up. I think long-term, maybe I like 5 a tiny, tiny bit better. But the art on the Law and the Rosinante are really, really cool as well. So, I think it's really just personal opinion which one you prefer. So I'm going to actually give this one 5 stars. I think this is one of the best things that you can buy right now in the market. And then the last thing that we have on this list is actually very similar logic to what we just talked about with the illustration boxes, and that is the new Tin Set Volume 2. For those who don't know, there are 3 of these. There's a Luffy one, an Ace one, and a Sabo one. The Luffy one can be had for around $45, and the Ace and the Sabo are more between like $35 and $40. What you get in this tin is a promo of whoever is on the tin. So in this case, you get a Luffy promo. Those promos are pretty cool. This one's selling for around $15. And then you also get 2 OP13 packs. So as we just did the math, at $29 a pack for OP13, $58 plus $15 for a card, $68.73. You're getting almost $75 worth of value out of something that you're able to buy for around $45. And that's not counting any value for the actual tin itself. So for that reason, I think if you're looking to rip OP13 packs, if you like the promo cards, if you like the tins, I think these are really good potential buys right now. And I do think they're going to get more expensive as the market realizes that the contents inside of them are actually worth significantly more than people are charging for the actual tins themselves. And so for that reason, I'm also giving this 5 stars. And I think that this and the illustration boxes are probably the 2 best buys of the week. That's all I have for today. I hope this was helpful. If you find this type of content enjoyable, please like, subscribe, hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you disagree with. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know what type of content you would like to see in the future. And so with that, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.